This war all starts with the Mamertines. So the first Punic War basically started because these guys called the Mamertines, who were Italian mercenaries employed by the tyrant of Syracuse, they got told they weren't needed because the successor took over and didn't want them anymore, and they could all go home. But the Mamertines didn't want to go home, so they went to Messana and snuck in. Hey, if I let you in, you're not going to massacre everybody, right? Yeah, why would we do that? We're not going to massacre anyone. The Mamertines then massacred everyone. Well, not everyone, only the men. And they stole their homes and families. So before we continue on, you probably don't even know what Carthage is. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of context. So Carthage was a Phoenician trade colony. So they were actually Phoenicians. And if you're a Latin-speaking Roman, then that means they're Punics. So that's why it's called the Punic Wars. The Carthaginians had built their empire on trade. If you don't know what trade is, I'll show you a little example of it. So in this example, they're trading fish. And so the Carthaginians were rich. Anyways, back to the video. The Mamertines started plundering on the coast of Syracuse, and the Syracusans weren't too happy about that, so they started fighting back. So the Mamertines asked the Carthaginians for help. The Carthaginians, who had always wanted full control of the whole island of Sicily, gladly agreed to help them and garrison troops there. But some of the Mamertines didn't really like the Carthaginians being there, so they also asked Rome for help. Now there were Roman troops and Carthaginian troops on the island at the same time, and the Roman troops kicked the Carthaginians out of there. So basically, there's a very good strategic island, and you place them in the middle of two Mediterranean superpowers, so it's gonna be war. So with Roman aggression and a couple of other factors, there was war. After the Roman victory at Messana, a bunch of towns across Sicily began changing allegiances to be loyal to Rome instead of Carthage, because being a winner is more fun than being a loser. So a massive land campaign started going on in Sicily, where the Carthaginians basically just hid in their fortresses, and the Romans were forced to lay siege to a bunch of them. So Sicily is an island. Islands are surrounded by water. For the Romans, who had been fighting on the Italian peninsula the entire time, they didn't have a navy at all. This meant they couldn't supply their troops. So Rome found a Carthaginian quinquereme that had grounded on Italian soil by accident and stole the design, and they made 120 warships in 2 months. An astonishing feat. However, the Romans were still outclassed by the Carthaginians, who had built their entire empire on expert seamanship. However, the Romans were quite good at land combat, so they just designed a big wooden tower with a spike on the end, so they would slam it into the enemy's ship and then send their soldiers across the bridge thing. And yeah. So in 256 BC, a bunch of ships fought. The Battle of Cape Ecnomus was 350 Carthaginian warships, 330 Roman warships, 150,000 Carthaginian men, and 140,000 Roman men. So the Romans won this battle, and there were 30 to 40,000 Carthaginian men killed, 64 captured ships, and 30 sunk, compared to the minimal losses of the Romans, 10,000 killed and 24 ships sunk. After the Romans won at Cape Ecnomus, they were free to plunder all over the Carthaginian land. The Romans marched onwards toward the heart of Carthage. The Carthaginians were not that good at land combat, So they decided to hire a mercenary from Sparta named Xanthippus to help them. He showed up and quickly took charge. He said, "You idiots! Put your war elephants in front of the army instead of in the back where they can't do anything. Find a big, flat field so your superior cavalry can do their job." So Xanthippus led the new Carthaginian army out to meet Regulus, the Roman consul who was in charge of the campaign on Africa, to meet them at the Battle of the Bagridas River. The elephants, now in the front, smashed into the Roman lines, causing disarray. The cavalry, with total freedom of movement, outflanked the Roman infantry, and Regulus was captured, and the battle was a total Carthaginian victory. And Xanthippus was forced to flee Carthage because the leadership got jealous. After this, there were still survivors in Africa who needed to be rescued, so Rome sent a fleet down there to pick them up. A Carthaginian fleet appeared, and they successfully fended it off. After this, they rescued the Roman survivors on Africa. A storm hit their fleet on the way back, and 100,000 men died, and there were 284 ships lost, nearly 80% of the Roman fleet. They built a new fleet, and the same thing happened, and they lost 150 ships. The Carthaginians were overconfident from recent successes, and they attempted to retake Panormus. However, the Romans countered the war elephants by throwing stuff at them. Now that they had pushed back the Carthaginian advance, the road was open to the final stronghold on the island, Lilybaeum. They laid siege, but the Carthaginian defense was fierce, and skilled blockade runners kept the city supplied. Then a guy named Poacher, who was a Roman consul, attacked the Carthaginian fleet, and he lost. Then, when a Roman supply fleet was going to Lilybaeum to supply their troops, I think you already know what happened. So, they lost 50,000 men and another fleet. After this, the Carthaginians thought the Romans couldn't build another fleet. So they recalled a large portion of their fleet to start trading again and making money.